Good day, and hello again. Today's footage, I was actually getting ready to clean the floor. I have to go back a little bit. Apparently I missed a little bit of footage pulling it off of one of the GoPros. So, we're going back a couple of days, and the last of the lights for the wedding came in, although this is actually the last of the lights for the normal DJ setup. So any time I DJ, there will be a bass system, which will be, the 4 full range speakers and 2 subs, and then these gig bar flexes are a little combination light that has some PAR capabilities. It has some strobing / flood capabilities, as well as UV light capabilities, and it has some rotating, they're called a derby or a moonflower effect. And these are kind of nice because they can actually just mount to any existing stand. So I can actually put them on a speaker stand underneath one of the speakers, and they won't take up any extra floor space. So before I can completely tear everything down, I've got to double check that all of my programming is actually doing what I want it to do and what I envisioned it to do. So I'm going to hurry and set them up and test them and make sure that everything's up to speed there. So we're going to get them plugged in and hooked up. But anyway, so the system will include these so that there's at least some atmosphere in any basic lighting setup, and then things like the uplights, the mirror ball, and eventually a truss with moving heads will all be upgrades that are available, as well as additional speakers that can be added for larger rooms, bigger events, things like that. That was one of the things that I didn't have originally, and we tried to use truss to set everything up and have everything wired ahead of time. So all we had to do was set the tree up or set the truss up, plug in a few things, and then we're good to go. But it never really panned out that way. So I'm really hoping that these particular lights will allow me to do what I am hoping. And so I now have the DMX plugged in, and I'm able to control them. And you can see there's the UV program. Each channel of UV light is just chasing itself. And I think I mentioned this in one of the last videos, but the goal is just to have some constant change and some constant light. So even when when the other lighting is dimmer, all of these different UVs will be on, and they'll be able to do their own thing, and then they'll make people's clothing glow and make objects in the room glow. So there will always be some light, and I won't be dependent on trying to make sure that the lighting for the room is always there, because that's what they'll do. And my only disappointment with the UV lights on the gig bars is just that you can't control them individually. You have your choice of basically all on white or all on purple, and then you have your choice of strobe pattern, which does its own thing. So they're a little bit lacking in that respect. And little derbies on the ends. I actually had a pair of those a while back. They were about twice the size of these ones, but they're basically the same thing. Same function, same features, just These ones are a little bit more compact. And I ended up selling them because I didn't like the fact that the light that comes out of them is always individual red, green, and blue beams. And so I'm toying with the idea that maybe I can take those and like tape some colored gel filters behind some of the lenses so that like when a red beam comes out, it's a little bit more green or yellow, I mean. But I don't think that'll really work because it's an actual red beam. So if I tried to filter blue or green out of it, nothing will happen. I think they would be much more effective if they had lenses that were colored and just white LEDs, and you could still chase the different LEDs to do, to have different effects, but then you'd have more color and you'd have a better effect in the room. So I don't know, but they do produce quite a bit of light, so that's the benefit. And then the Parkans produce a good amount of floodlight for the room as well. So this will be a pretty good amount of party atmosphere for a pretty wide variety of rooms and events. And maybe the mirror ball will be part of the basic setup too. I don't know. I haven't decided that. The advantage the mirror ball provides is that then there's a spot for those other 4 UV lights, and it just kind of ups the wow factor. It gives a little bit more versatility. But this particular video, this particular day, I didn't spend too much time actually playing with them. I did spend a little bit of time just tweaking the programs that I'd made so that I could get in my head the effect it was going to have, and now I can sit down and program what I want them to do pretty much anytime I want, and I don't have to rely on having them turned on. And then we'll start tearing things down, putting things away, and as you saw in the last video, which was a few days after this one, being able to start clearing things out to get that subfloor in. And I gotta say, I'm actually super excited. Last night we got the plywood stand built, and I'll give a lot more details of that in the video of last night's footage. That's something I've kind of wanted to do for a really long time, although it's an idea that morphed from the fact that I wanted a panel saw, which, like the kind that you go into Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever, Ace Hardware, pretty much any hardware store that sells sheet goods and can cut them down to size for you, has a big saw where you put the panel of sheet good up on its side and move the saw up and down or left and right and make rip cuts or cross cuts or whatever. Apparently those saws aren't cheap. I looked into one, I don't know, probably close to 20 years ago, and it was like a $35,000 or $40,000 saw, and I thought, that's just stupid. I looked up over the years of how to build my own, and I had actually planned on building my own for a long time. I looked up, had all kinds of different ideas, and they just always never really were able to pan out, largely because I never really had a place for one, although at the moment I still don't actually have a place for one. But I came across a video on YouTube about a guy who was talking about how to handle sheet goods in a one-man shop, and I thought, oh, sure, why not? And it was basically just a pair of sawhorses with a couple of runners that ran from one sawhorse to the other. They were a little bit longer and taller than normal sawhorses. His version was a little bit more um, flexible, I guess, or storable would probably be the right term, because you can actually take the legs off of the sawhorse crossbeam so that you can break it down a little easier. It's not going to be as ultimately sturdy as some other cross sawhorse styles, but if all you're doing is, you know, putting a sheet of plywood on it and then cutting it, then it doesn't actually have to hold a ton of weight. So I was getting ready to put the little lights away, and I realized that I didn't like how they were how they fit in the case. I didn't like the gaps and the, you know, using the styrofoam pieces I had cut previously, and I realized that I had these little pieces of foam that came with the various other lights that I've gotten, and that this would actually work much better to help fill gaps and just to make sure that they don't bang around and damage each other during shipping. So I'm going to take a few minutes to rearrange those, and I ended up actually completely redoing it so that they fit in there far better than they used to. I ended up completely removing the dividers that came with it, which when I first did this, I had the hope that someday I would be able to find some more of the older style of light, because they had the ability to actually plug other lights in. But I ended up deciding that that wasn't a big enough feature, and that if I do, or when I do buy more lights, I'll buy the current version because they're smaller and I can fit twice as many in one case. So I ended up just starting from scratch and creating my own little divider system for them, and it was much easier than the styrofoam because these blocks were solid instead of all formed and weird, and because these cut with just a pocket knife without any of the styrofoam problems. I didn't have to use a heated knife to melt the styrofoam or deal with little styrofoam balls falling everywhere. And anyway, so that turned out to work out pretty well once we got that all set up. The biggest challenge we actually ended up having was restructuring the case transporting device that I have, so that I can use the mirror ball tree with the existing transport case, and it ended up not being a huge terrible issue. Next time we set things up, I am gonna play with that, which we'll actually be doing here in the not too distant future. So to do a full system check at an actual event, we're going to do a Ward talent show, and we're going to provide music and lighting for that. And then we'll go, basically we're going to pack up from that, put everything in the trailer, come home for the night, and then leave first thing in the morning, and we'll be heading to Utah at that point. So it'll be a little bit before that happens, because we're about 4 weeks away, and it'll be a little bit before footage of that is probably worked on. Well, not probably, it'll be a while before footage is actually worked on, because the only thing I'll be doing while we're in Utah is taking footage off of the GoPros if we do have different things that we end up wanting. I will be taking the GoPros just because you never know. We plan on spending some time with some family and doing a little bit of jackrabbit hunting, which we lovingly call hiking with a purpose, because unlike most jackrabbit hunters, I'm not out there to just shoot a gun. if I want to do that, I'll shoot at a target, not at a live animal. I'm out there to get some food. So we don't always actually do any shooting, because if we scare them off too soon and there's not a good clean shot, then we don't take it. But we have come home with jackrabbit a few times, and it is by far hare is by far better tasting, in my opinion, than rabbit. A little distinction between the, well, there's quite a few distinctions between the two, but flavor is definitely one of them. It's like the difference between a chicken and a turkey, for the difference between a rabbit and a hare. So anyway, we're getting pretty close to the end of this this battery's footage for the day. Got everything. We ended up getting everything cleared out by the end of the day, but it did take us a little bit, so we're trying to organize things as we put them away, so that we don't have to handle them more than the one time. And so Emily came to help break down this tree. That is the one downside to this Maribel tree, is it's a pretty sweet setup, but it does require two people, and honestly even a third person would kind of be a benefit to it. Although I don't know if a third person would actually get in the way. But like I said, that's where the battery died for today. So thank you as always for watching. Stay safe out there, and God bless you and yours.